All right. Tell us a little bit about yourself, such as where and when you were born, some about your family of origin, your schooling, and the type of work that you do or have done.
I was born May 31st, 1940, right here in Sullivan County, Tennessee. When I was 3, I moved to Virginia, and I lived there until I went in the military. I grew up and went to school at Gate City High School. Uh, I, traveled a lot in my life and always interested in different things and different people. I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor since 1968. And as a Baptist pastor, I've also gone to many mission fields and met people from all walks of life and various races.
Okay.
I'm now 73 years old.
Okay.
I'm a pastor.
As a child, do you recall any adult ever discussing prejudice with you?
I do know, and I'm thankful that I had this, that my parents did not allow prejudice. That meant a lot to me. My father's father and mother had black people that worked around their house. One time they were wealthy people, and the Depression wiped all that out. But anyway, I've heard my dad speak of the people that worked around him, and no prejudiced speech was allowed in my family.
Okay. Um, Sometimes people will tell children one thing but model another. Did you pick up on any unwritten rules from your adults in your life about how to interact with those who were different from you?
Not in my home where I grew up. Now my grandfather and grandmother lived 2 miles from me, and my mother had 2 brothers, and my oldest brother was in the war with Japan. And I do remember specifically that I was just a boy, of course, and because of that, I was prejudiced toward the Japanese people. And that lingered several years, and I, of course, later learned that you can't really be honestly prejudiced against anybody that you don't know. I later figured that out. But the term Japs just, it was just a bad thing to me. And I remember the first time I ever met any Japanese people or seen them in person. I mean, I just stared at them, you know. But it did take me long to get over that.
Okay. Can you recall one of the first times that you encountered someone, and I guess that would, relate back to that, and what was your reaction? So you just...
Well, I know when I went in the military, there was a black boy that joined the army the same day I did. And I guess because I had never been ever prejudiced and still am not toward the black people, because of that, when I got on the bus and we stopped between Roanoke, Roanoke, Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, and Fort Jackson, South Carolina, we stopped at a bus station. It was nighttime, and we had just a short break. And I sat down at the counter to get a milkshake, and I saw this black boy, and I felt so sorry for him because he got married the day before, and he just joined the army, and he was breaking up inside, and so I went over and sat with him, and that was the first time that I ever experienced the real racial issue. I was sitting there, and I noticed everybody else is sitting, several feet away, and I noticed a little 2x4 nailed across the middle of this long counter, but I didn't know what it stood for. And so I'm sitting here trying to talk to this guy, trying to cheer him up a little bit. And I heard somebody say, "You want to go to jail, boy?" And I turned around, and of course I'm bad to joke about things, even in a serious situation sometimes. And I turned around and said, "Well, no, not really." And it's 2 huge, they looked like they were 6'5" black officers. And I said, and they said, "Well, you better get back across that line." Well, I didn't jump up and move right away because I had turned and I stared, and I thought, well, that's what that thing's for. I noticed they never would serve me. They brought his milkshake, but they wouldn't bring mine. because I bought him a milkshake, and they brought his, but wouldn't bring mine. And that was my first real experience with racism.
Okay, thinking back over your life, can you identify any events that happened on a national or regional level that influenced your thinking about prejudice or about other groups in general?
Well, of course, I've seen a lot in, on the TV, back in the 60s, the walks and all the things that they did, and the racism, the battles, and burning the cities, and so forth. I've lived through all of that, but I wasn't there personally, But as far as my concern about racism, the religion I was in is Jehovah's Witness, and they don't allow that. And that all helped me. And of course, I was already that way because my mother and father, they did not allow any racial slurs. Kids playing will say things, but they allowed nothing like that.
Okay. What about personal events that may have influenced your thinking?
Well, I guess if you want to mention my mission work going to Africa, I mean, I'm the first white man that thousands of Africans has ever seen. And those people over there, they may not have a great education like we have here, but they understand human nature better than we do. That's a fact. And they can pick up on things. The guy that went with me the first time did not like black people. Just evident he didn't like it. He wanted to touch them. He wanted them touching him. And so they automatically just took to me because I didn't treat them any different than I would somebody in my own immediate family. And they picked up on that. And the parents saw that I loved their kids and would play with them. This guy here would never even speak to them. Although, you didn't know their language, but you could speak to people without knowing their language, without knowing yours. But that made it easy for me to work with those people because of the fact that I felt that way.
Okay. Now, what have you told or what do you plan on telling your children about prejudice?
I never have let my children use racial slurs either. And I teach them that the same God made us made them.
Okay. And do you think that the problem of prejudice in the United States has improved, grown worse, or stayed about the same during your lifetime? And how have things changed or stayed the same?
Well, I think it has definitely improved because, back in Gate City, I wasn't around when it happened. It was happening then, but I mean, there were certain places the black people could not go. And the way they, when I was young, riding the bus, I picked to catch a bus at Boxing Gap, come to Kingsport, and the black people had to sit in the back, and all of that. That's all changed. So it's definitely changed, and now that black people can come and they can sit wherever, it's definitely improved.
Okay.
Now, as far as, of course, they're not the only race. I mean, you got the Spanish people too. And I think the fact that I've been to Mexico, I've been to Argentina and Bolivia and stuff, and so I've been around them. And when it comes right down to it, I'd have one statement to say about racial prejudice. I don't think anybody should be treated worse or better because of their race. I mean, I see a lot of people today that are bending over backwards. They're awkward in doing it. You can see their awkwardness. They're bending over backwards to try to help certain races, and it's like they've got a guilty complex. I don't have that. I was once talking to a black man, and he was talking about things, and he was a member of the NAACP, and he was talking to me, and I said, I don't bow my head when I talk to you about this, and I said, I don't hesitate using terms, and that I will use. I mean, I'm not talking about the N-word and all that, but I said, as far as I'm concerned, I didn't make you black, and I didn't make me white, and I've got nothing to do with that. So why should I bother with it? And so I don't get into that with these people. But when I'm talking about them, I don't, I'm not nervous about it because they're just a human being like I'm a human being. whatever race they are.
Who do you believe had the most influence on your views about diversity?
Probably my parents, I guess.
Okay, and what, if anything, do you believe is your responsibility in combating prejudice?
Well, of course, I think I do that from the pulpit as a pastor. And then, I mean, I'm not going out on these marches and things like that. I'm not saying I would, but right now I don't see myself doing that.
Okay, and how do you believe that prejudice and discrimination should be handled in the future in the U.S.?
Well, it should definitely be handled honestly. I don't think we have to go around, some people like say they got a guilty complex. What's been done to them, I didn't do it. And so I don't feel like that I need to be held responsible for what I didn't do. So it needs to be the generation that faces it should be the generation that deals with it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, is that it?
Okay. Tell me a little bit about yourself, such as where you were born, or your work, your family, that kind of thing.
My name's Barbara Martin. I'm 47. I grew up in a family with 4 children, three girls and a boy. My dad was a middle-class worker in a chemical plant, also a pastor of a church. I have a high school education, plus I went to cosmetology school and have been a hairdresser for almost 29 years.
Okay. As a child, do you recall any adult ever discussing prejudice with you?
No, not in our family. It was never really a discussion or anything that was taught, good or bad. We just never really had anything to talk about that.
Okay. Sometimes people will tell children one thing but model another. Did you pick up on any unwritten rules from adults in your life about how to interact with those who were different from you?
No, not really. I never did have any memories of my parents teaching us. Definitely never anything bad against any other race or people that were different. I guess all parents do teach their children polite ways to be in front of people, don't say anything negative or bad, or but I guess we always just kind of knew that without being really taught.
Okay. Can you recall one of the first times that you encountered someone who was different than you, and what was your reaction?
No, not really. I don't remember at any certain point. I guess I knew the difference in different races and things, but I never did really think about it that much. I know I did not go to school with any kids that were of a different race until probably high school, which was, I think I had one boy that I can remember in high school, and he was just kind of another kid. We never really thought anything different about him.
Okay, thinking back over your life, can you identify any events that happened on a national or regional level that influenced your thinking about prejudice or other groups of people in general?
Not really anything significant that I can think of, anything that was talked about or that happened that was discussed at home with our family. I don't recall anything really.
Okay. What about personal events that you may have influenced your thinking?
I guess the biggest thing that influence would be, I guess where my dad was involved in mission work for other countries and traveling and working with them, that he he cared about everybody the same. It wasn't that he was just dealing with one group of people. He went to lots of different places, and they were all important.
Okay, what have you told or what do you plan on telling your children about prejudice?
I guess we haven't really discussed it that much either, except when they were little. I was always careful that they was never saying anything negative or derogatory toward anybody. Made sure a lot of times when they ask questions of why people said certain things, that I tried to explain it, to make them understand about how other people feel, not that it was our way of believing, and how to understand what they were saying.
Okay, do you think that the problem of prejudice in the United States has improved, grown worse, or stayed about the same during your lifetime?
I think it's gotten better. I don't seem to hear people say anything, or people are treated more fairly as far as like jobs and living. People tend to be more acceptable toward other races and beliefs.
Who do you believe had the most influence on your views about your diversity?
I guess my dad and parents.
Okay, what, if anything, do you believe is your responsibility in combating prejudice?
I guess my biggest responsibility is teaching my children to be taught like I was taught.
Okay, and how do you believe that prejudice or discrimination should be handled in the future in the U.S.?
To keep doing what they've been doing, as far as trying to make people be more accepting of each other and not judge different groups just by their race or beliefs.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, comparing the two that were interviewed, we already see some difference between their ages, where Pastor Ed was born 1940 and Barbara was born 1965, so there is some age difference there. Most of their background had, they both had parents that did not allow prejudice, or nothing was said in a derogatory manner towards people of different race. Or different religious backgrounds. Barbara had family that didn't say much or didn't say anything bad, and they kind of knew to be polite. And Ed said that, his mom and dad also had that same kind of rearing for their children, that they wouldn't let anything be said that was negative or anything like that. Ed did have a grandfather that was prejudiced towards people that were from Japan because of the oldest brother going to war in Japan. There was kind of a prejudice towards that due to the war. Barbara didn't seem to remember any specific moment in her life that she met someone of a different race, or didn't really notice. She knew the difference, but didn't see any discrimination. Ed experienced that in a more harsh manner, he said, by going into the military, sitting with a man that was black, and realized the issue whenever, he was asked to not sit with the man, and realized how other people thought about people of other races. Barbara couldn't remember anything in her childhood about any national or anything in society that she could remember about the discrimination, which could show the change just between those years that were between her and Pastor Ed. Pastor Ed did remember the 60s walks on television, but couldn't remember anything affecting him. So, that could be due to those years, about how this has changed over the years. both proclaimed that Pastor Ed, which is Barbara's dad, his work in missions contributed a lot to how they viewed people of other races and religions, because going on the missions trip, that was what influenced them the most. Is, personally, Pastor Ed going, that influenced him to be able to talk to these other people about his religion. And then Barbara seeing her dad and how he cared about everyone the same, no matter what color their skin or how they believed, contributed to how they saw people just all the same. There was no discrimination. Pastor Ed talked about how he always wanted his children to treat everybody the same, and told them how God made everyone the same. And Barbara also said that they knew to be polite, and it was explained to just be very polite, nothing negative. So that shows in both of their conversations. Both did say that it has approved. In Pastor Ed's life, since he has been through more, has said that he's seen it improve over the years. And Barbara has also said that she's seen more fair, even in jobs and things like that. So there's probably been more of a change in Pastor Ed's life, but it is certainly true to say that both have seen it get better instead of worse. Both said that their parents was the one that influenced them the most. And Pastor Ed said his responsibility would be his pastor, as a pastor, to lead his congregation and then also his family in knowing the right thing. And Barbara said teaching her children was her greatest responsibility, to teach them how they were taught to be polite and treat everyone the same. And they said for the last question, Pastor Ed said that it's, if everyone's treated the same, it wasn't his generation that caused all of the pain. So he feels like if everyone is just treated the same, then there's nothing more that can be done. Everyone that was in that tough time during the 60s and before, during slavery or things like that, that's happened, and most of those people have gone on and have passed away. So now our generation is left to keep trying to keep people more feeling the same and more accepted. And I feel like if everyone does that on both sides of the spectrum, no matter the race, then I feel like we can really make everyone feel that they truly are the same, no matter their race or religion.